Hi everybody, welcome back for video 2 of the first chapter in Purposeful Designs, Earth and Space Science. I'm Mrs. Pound, and if you're one of my students, you should have your notes out at this point so you can be writing down your notes as you're following along with the video. And if you're not and you are a teacher who has found these videos, you can purchase my notes if you're interested at Teachers Pay Teachers. So today we're going to talk about the age of the Earth in section 1.1.2. So let's get started. Our objectives today are to compare naturalism and theism, to describe various views of the time of creation, and explain carbon-14 dating. So naturalism versus theism. Naturalism is the belief that matter and energy are all that exists and that undirected natural processes formed the universe. It does not support the idea of any supernatural force or significance to life. And it states that all life is random and the existence of life in its various forms occurred by accident through natural processes. So naturalism would be the view that would be held by an evolutionist. Theism is the belief that the universe was formed purposely by a supernatural being. That being, the God of the Bible, personally and purposefully created the universe. And the design of creation was intentional, not accidental. Some dating methods that are used in earth science. One big one is carbon-14 dating. You probably hear a lot about this. This is the method used to determine the age of items of organic origin by measuring the radioactivity of their carbon-14 content. So these are things that have to have contained carbon at one time. That's what's meant by organic. They're used to determine the age of items of organic origin that are less than 50,000 years old, so there are limitations to this dating. Carbon-14 is a radioactive element that decays to become nitrogen-14. Scientists know that it takes 5,730 years for half of the carbon-14 in an object to decay into nitrogen-14. And they use the amount of nitrogen-14 in an object to determine how old it is. They basically compare the ratio of nitrogen-14 to carbon-14. Okay, another dating method is using what are called varves. These are the light and dark layers of sediments deposited in a yearly cycle. And they are found in some lakes. Like tree rings, this is how they're counted, is like tree rings. There are these layers that you can see, and depending on the season, they are lighter materials are deposited and then darker materials, a lot like tree rings. So that's another method that is used. Now, there are a couple of views of the time of creation. And those two views are the young earth creationist and the old earth creationist. The young earth creationists say that God suddenly made everything in the universe in 6 literal 24-hour days as described in Genesis 1. So their basis for creation of the universe is the Bible. They say that the earth is 6,000 to 12,000 years old based on studying the Bible and looking at the genealogies. Young earth creationists also say that Earth's geological features, such as rock layers and floods, were caused by events like the flood. And what you will also find is when we talked about the dating methods, the carbon-14 and the varves, young earth creationists would disagree with some of the assumptions of those methods. The first assumption they would disagree with, especially with the radiometric dating, is that just the assumption that the Earth's conditions have always been the same. Because obviously they haven't been, because the flood altered things greatly. The other assumption they would not agree with is that there has never been some kind of contamination of some kind in those samples from the outside. And the other assumption is that the decay of those materials has always been the same, because different conditions could possibly change how quickly those elements decay. And in fact, the Institute for Creation Research has been doing a lot of looking into this topic. And what they have discovered is most scientists would not test something like diamond, because it is assumed that diamonds were created about 4.6 billion years ago. So they would not apply that method to diamonds. But scientists from the Institute for Creation Research did apply it to diamonds and found that there's still some carbon-14 in diamonds. So if there's still carbon-14 in diamonds, it looks like they're younger than we think they are. And they have done this for other things as well, testing them and finding that those methods are off sometimes. The other thing about the VARBs is the VARBs don't necessarily mean that it happened gradually over time. A flood produces many layers that settle out at different times like that as well. The other view is the old Earth creationist view. Now this view sticks more to the science and scientific discoveries. So they would say, an old Earth creationist would say, that God made the stars and planets 12 to 15 billion years ago. The Earth was formed about 4.6 billion years ago. And Earth's geologic features are the result of slow changes and natural processes. So they are taking more the discoveries of science and trying to fit them into the Bible. So because of this, there are many views of how God created. Depending on, over time with these scientific discoveries, people, instead of taking the Bible and looking and saying, okay, does this fit what the Bible says because the Bible is truth? Instead, they took what science was discovering and tried to fit it and place it into the Bible different places. So the results are many different views on how God created, because the Bible doesn't always get into great detail about this too. So there's special creation. And with special creation, one thing that's talked about is microevolution, because you've heard of evolution. Microevolution states that yes, there are changes in organisms' populations over time. But if you start out with a bacteria, you're still going to have a bacteria. If you start out with a bird, you're still going to have a bird in the long run. There might be small changes that develop new species, but you are not going to change the kind of the organism. There's theistic evolution that basically says that God used evolution to create all of the things on Earth. And so a theistic evolutionist would believe in macroevolution. Macroevolution states that you would start out with very simple life, something like bacteria, and it would change over time until you get to humans. So one kind of organism, through mutations, would change into another kind of organism given enough time. That's all I have for you here. If you're in my class, you will be looking into some of the views of creation more deeply, and we will be studying those in a project. Okay, so we are done with this topic, and in this topic we have compared naturalism and theism. We've discussed various views of the time of creation and how God created, and we have talked about carbon-14 dating. Now, go back, make sure your notes are complete. If you're missing something, go back in the video and look for it. And remember to write down your 5 questions that you think I might ask on the test based on this information. See you for the next section.